Welcome back to the 7th grade Mustache. On today's episode, we'll be speaking about numbers, signs, and omens. In the Bible, in Genesis 3:22, it says, knowing good and evil. It also speaks about the tree of life. It says, behold, the man has become like one of us in knowing good and evil. Now, lest he reach out his hand and take also of the tree in life and eat and live forever. In the Hebrew Kabbalah, which is the mystery school, the ancient teachings of Hebrews, there is the tree of life they speak of. And the tree of life has 3 pillars and 22 paths. 3 pillars of the Kabbalah are severity, mercy, and balance. Those are divided into 4 worlds. The tree of life can also be divided into 3 vertical pillars. There are 10 spheres within those 3 pillars, and all of the spheres belong to one of these 3 pillars and have different characteristics. There is the pillar of mercy, and it's found on the right side of the diagram of the tree of life. It's associated with the left-hand side of the body and the right brain function. It is composed of the following 3 spheres: Chakma, Chesed, Netzache, and Netzach. The top sphere, Chakma, is the sphere of Yang in Chinese Taoist culture. It is the highest sphere of the masculine, whereas the lower spheres are generally considered to have feminine characteristics. This is the Yang at the center of the Yin. So basically, this is the dark circle within the white of Yin and Yang. But the next is the pillar of severity. All right, the pillar of severity lies on the left-hand side of the tree of life. As you look at it, this diagram on a piece of paper on the right-hand side of the body, it's associated with the left brain functions, and it's composed of the following sephira, these 3 spheres: Bina, Gebura, and Hod, H-O-D. Bina is the great C. It is the sphere of Yin, the highest aspects of feminine principles, whereas the lower spheres, representing war and science, are generally considered to be masculine. This is the Yin, the white dot in the black part of the Yang in Chinese Taoist alchemy. Now, the pillar of balance, the 3rd pillar. This is the middle pillar. Pillar of balance is what we're talking about. And this middle pillar, which is on the center of the tree, it's associated with balance, things being whole, and integration. And it is made up of 3 spheres: Kether, Tipereth, Yesod, and Malkuth. Okay, let me stop there for a second. So what we're talking about is the tree of life. And you hear about the tree of life in the Bible, as we quoted Genesis earlier. In the holy books, or in the sacred science books of the Hebrew mystics, they speak of the tree of life in great detail. And they break down actually what the tree of life means symbolically. So when you begin to understand this, you see how it plays out in reality. For those who are new to this, it's kind of like the yin and yang and the I Ching rolled into one, okay? And it talks about how the right half of the body and the left half of the body are integrated, and how what controls that and what emotions dominate the different hemispheres of your being, and how that relates to your spiritual being. I'm bringing all this up because all this is divine wisdom that's translated from the Word of God. And so they put these into these holy books. When you start to understand that each letter in languages, no matter which language it is, has a number associated with it. It can be in English, it can be in Hebrew, it can be in Japanese, it can be in Swahili, but there is a number that's attached to every letter. So in the West, we understand numerology. And numerology, it allows us to attach one letter to every letter in the alphabet, so that then you can take your name and you can see that the letters themselves, their vibration is low, right? It doesn't have that much charge to it. But when you combine these different vibrations together, then you create a name, or you create a word. And that word or that name has a vibration, has a charge. Imagine your name like a stencil. And your name is a stencil that is a cutout of a piece of paper. But what's shining through that is white light, formless light. Okay? So if you take that light and you shine it through that stencil that has your name on that piece of paper, you give that light form, you give it shape. It then has a vibration because you're shaping the light. And that shaping of the light is geometry, right? And so that's why sacred geometry is really, really important, because angles have a vibration to them, which is why a pyramid has a certain vibration to it. Without going too far into it, there's experiments that you can do where you can take a copper coat hanger, and bend it. Go to Home Depot, get yourself a little small welding torch and make a 4-sided pyramid. Now, you can put that over your office, wherever you sit and you work. You can put that over a garden where you're growing tomatoes. Wherever you place that pyramid, what's below it will become charged with active energy. Plants grow prolifically under these pyramids. People are able to focus their left and right side of their brains together in hemisync with these pyramids. Okay, but that works because of sacred geometry, because these angles, these right angles that form a shape, has a vibration to it. So going back to names. So names have vibrations to them. And so that when you speak the name of Jesus, for example, in the face of pure evil, it scares them away, because that name has a vibration. They recognize that name. And so in Hebrew, there are the names of God called the Tetragrammaton. You see this name of God, or the names of God, on this crest or the standard for certain universities. And one of them is Yale. And so you're wondering, like, well, why is that there? So that's the whole point of this show. This is why we're here, to break these things down, because there's things that you see in your life every day, on the news, all around you. You're surrounded by symbols and omens and numbers. And we take these things for granted, but we don't realize the power of them.
They have significance.
Right. And why 7 is a divine number. And why Michael Jordan wore the number 23 and like completely changed the whole basketball game. Because in I Ching, the Chinese method of divination, I Ching means to break apart. So this guy, whenever he got the ball, he would bust loose and just do some fucking crazy shit. So let's continue forward. These numbers have power, but there's different methods for finding the power of these numbers. Now, the Greeks got this method from Egypt, which existed before that time, and on and on and on. But it also existed in the ancient Hebrew world, and they call it Gematria. It's a buzzword again now. You're hearing more and more about Gematria, and how Gematria, you can enter a word into this Gematrian cipher, and it will tell you what a phrase means, how the phrase vibrates on an occult or esoteric level. And so I'm going to give you some examples of how numerology and gematria are encoded into a lot of things that we do every day. So in numerology, A is 1, the first letter, because that's in our English alphabet. A is the first letter. All right. But once you go past 9, the number 9, everything has to be broken down, meaning you have to add those numbers together until you get a single number, right? So everything after 9 has to be reduced to a single number, okay? So, for example, in Gematria, 201 is the numeric number for light, and it equals knowledge. Now, see, you hear this in esoteric terms a lot, where there's initiation ceremonies, and the Masons, they ask for light. They ask for light because light is knowledge. And for those Christians out there, the light bearer was who?
Lucifer.
There you go. Okay? And he told Eve to eat of the apple to have knowledge of
good and evil.
There you go.
But see, that's where it gets complicated, because I remember in college, when you get to college, you study on your own. But the tree of good and evil, they were saying that was the nervous system, and some people say that when he ate the apple, it was oral sex, and that his eyes were open. There's a lot of people that also say that no, the tree of good knowledge, that is the nervous system, and it means something else.
Well,
so
the thing is, okay, there was this book that we had back in the day, and it was the pastor's handbook, and really what this was a book of Masonic ciphers that basically broke down the Bible into symbolism and explained what the metaphors actually meant. And so if you take a tree and you uproot it and you turn it upside down, what do you have? You have all the roots on the top and all the branches on the bottom. That looks like the circulatory and nervous system of a human being, with all of the roots going into the brain at the top of the spine. And then all the roots being all the meridians, being all of the circulatory pathways that lead down to your extremities. So 201, that is light, that is knowledge. Now I'm going to give you some crazy examples. All right, the last Catholic Pope was the 201st Pope. See, now all the popes have been Jesuits, okay? But the last one was the 201st Pope. That was the last Catholic Pope. Then Pope Francis became the first Jesuit Pope. The Jesuits...
What's the difference? Because maybe I don't understand.
Okay.
I thought I did.
In the 16th century, the Jesuits were founded as the modern-day descendants of the Knights Templar.
No, yeah. They were like warriors, Catholic warriors. I got you.
What they are, the Jesuits are kind of like the special forces of the Vatican. What I mean by that is they have the special forces. They're more like the intelligence agency of the Vatican, right?
Yep.
So, okay, like they went to Japan and they failed like a bunch of times because the Japanese could see right through that shit. But what happened is that the Vatican sent the Jesuits went on their own, and they studied the Asian cultures, and they picked up some things from Confucianism, and they folded that into their teaching, so that when they infiltrated the Vatican and then finally took over the Vatican, they applied what they learned from Confucianism into what it is they're teaching. But let me explain a little bit how they came to be. There was a book called Holy Blood, Holy Grail. This book is explosive because it just pisses off a lot of people, because it points to things and shines light on things that people don't want brought to the light. And so one is that these people, there's a group of people in Europe who believe that Christ did not die on the cross. Their understanding is that Christ survived the crucifixion. They patched him up. He got married. He had kids. And his kids were intermarried into the royal families of England, because it's believed that Christ went to France. He went to France and he lived there. And so that is how you start to hear about these people within French history that were the ones who were pushing for people to go to the Holy Land in Jerusalem and get the artifacts of Christ's crucifixion 1,000 years after he had died, or 1,100 years after he died.
Supposedly they have found the cross, or at least pieces of it. Another one that was in that group was Da Vinci. Remember, Da Vinci was in a offshoot of that group. I don't want to get the wrong name for the royal family of England. Was it the Merovingians? I don't want to say the wrong name.
No, those are the French. Merovingians. You hear that name in the second Matrix movie. Okay, so the Merovingians are the aristocrats that believe they are descendants of, and they're the people that eventually start the Jesuit order. So, and what the Jesuits are, they basically found a way to rule Europe by taking over the Vatican. And so that's how the Jesuits got involved with the Vatican. They eventually, they weaseled their way in there after, getting real slick and learning about espionage and torture and like all types of ways to basically they became an intelligence agency. You know what I'm saying? And as they finally weaseled their way into the Vatican and got a control over it. And so this story is about the Jesuits and then how they came to be, because the Merovingians are the ones who believe they retain this royal bloodline or holy bloodline, or both, from Jesus, because Jesus said that he had came here to further the kingdom of David, bring about the kingdom of heaven on earth. And so that was the edict for these people. That was the edict, that was the rule That's the MO, the blueprint for the Merovingians to finally one day gain control over Europe and eventually the world. And so, you have Christianity in just about, 90% of the countries in the world. And so they finally got their Pope in there. And so now you have all these changes that are happening to Catholicism that were different. You got this Pope that accepts gay people, this Pope that's apologizing for touching the kids. This Pope is, believes aliens is real. All this stuff is Jesuit. It's Jesuit, right? And then you're like, well, all that sounds good. Yes, it's fine so long as they don't have ulterior motive. But the Jesuits do have an ulterior motive. And it's world control. So, furthering on this theme of numbers and signs and omens, you have to understand that there's different groups under this umbrella that controls the entire world. And one of those is Skull and Bones. And Skull and Bones is also known as the Order, or Order 322, or the Brotherhood of Death, okay? The Georgia Guidestones were destroyed on the night of July 5th, the morning of July 6th, and they were bombed. There's video footage you can go and watch and see that they were destroyed. The remains were dismantled that same day. So we're going to get really crazy here for a second because something very important happened on July 5th. And the Hadron Collider, particle smasher, CERN, was turned on to twice the power that it was the last time. And so first they did a small test, and then they did a full power, and now they're doing twice the power. Every time they turn that machine on, it warps time and space and the dimensional characteristics of reality on the planet Earth, because they're creating black holes on the Earth. Now, as soon as they turn it on, it creates these ripples, it creates these waves. Now, there's more than one wave that's riding out from that center point in Switzerland underground. But it takes a while for these ripples to make it to different parts of the world. And then they shut it off. So when they shut this machine on, the Georgia Guidestones were destroyed. Now, other things happen. This thing that's known as the Mandela Effect. The Mandela Effect is basically a way of understanding how reality has been changed. And either somebody is editing reality or
it's being affected at a different rate for different people.
So, okay, I want you to think of our reality like this. So when they turn the CERN machine on, and imagine you pour yourself a glass of soda pop. You pour the pop in a glass and you're looking at the surface of the drink, and there's bubbles on the surface of that drink, and they're standing there for just a brief second, and then they pop out of existence. So where are those bubbles going? Are the bubbles still there, but they've shifted into a different dimension? Or do they just completely disintegrate completely? Now, our universe is based on entropy, which means everything falls apart. So these small little things probably just fall apart. Maybe. Or quantumly, mechanically, in an entangled manner, they're disintegrating from this multiverse universe into another universe, where a person is pouring another glass and they're popping and appearing there. I'll give you an example. Culturally,
they have a different outcome is what we're saying.
Right. Culturally, pop culture, things have changed once the machine was turned on. When the machine was turned on, there were all these changes in movies and in books and in like media. For example, in Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, the second movie, there is a scene that is iconic. And Darth Vader, who's voiced by James Earl Jones, says to Mark Hamill, Luke Skywalker, he says, right at the end, Luke gets his hand cut off and he's about to fall to his death. And he tells him that he's his father. So he wants to save his son. And he says, Luke, I am your father. I saw that when I was a kid, when I was a little boy.
We all saw that.
We all saw that.
It all blew our minds. And he's not his father. That doesn't make sense.
Right. And so the crazy part about this is all right, everybody has this shared memory. And this shared memory is the way Darth Vader says that to Luke Skywalker. Nobody even questions that. Everybody's like, that's the way it was. Well, it's strange now because everybody is saying, well, it's weird because it's like the Thanos effect where half the universe disappears. Well, half the universe now thinks that Darth Vader said to Luke, no, I am your father, instead of Luke, I am your father. That one word, swapping out that one word makes that difference, and it changes everything. Now, then you might say to yourself, oh, that's trivial. No. Because this is a shared, cherished memory that a lot of people have. Okay, another one is from your childhood, the Berenstain Bears. How do you remember seeing that written on a VHS tape, on a book in the library?
Berenstain.
Berenstain Bears. Steen. STIN.
Hold up. We remember the cartoon too. Don't forget, they would have special cartoons on CBS. Berenstain Christmas and stuff, kind of like Charlie Brown. It wasn't a regular show, but they would have a show every once. They said they were the Berenstain Bears.
The characters, the voice actors said this. Now, once they turned that machine on, now they're the Berenstain Bears. And I'm like, hold up, what? And again, people are like, oh, that's trivial. No, that's why it's so scary. Because people are like, oh, well, that's just is your memory now. Like, you're an adult and, like, of course you'll forget things. No. These are things I know like the back of my hand because I've looked at them 1,000 times when my mind was the most impressionable.
The reason it's called the Mandela Effect, and we've talked about it on past episodes, is because Nelson Mandela was supposedly died in prison, but then all of a sudden he didn't. So the only thing that we can remember that gives us a pause to that is that there was a Mandela Mandela movie on HBO way back in the day. And I watched that movie and I remember him dying in prison. Fast forward so many years, he gets out of prison, he wasn't dead, and everybody's like, okay, wait a minute. I remember him getting out of prison, but I also remember the movie that had Danny Glover in it many years ago, him and Alfred Woodard. So that's the reference that everybody's referring to, is that we remember watching this movie and that man died. So did he not die in there, or are we dealing with a different reality now? There's something happened that affected everything. And so all these common memories are very important because, okay, maybe I get it. I might have been wrong once or twice, but everybody's wrong. So we're all remembering this wrong. And so that's why these movies are a shared memory that we all have. Because, I don't know what goes on in your life. You know what I'm saying, Roscoe? I'm not there with you every day. But we can use those movies as a point of reference. Like, hey.
That's what I'm saying. Because, okay, the things that sustain us throughout reality, the things that sustained black people during the Middle Passage and slavery were stories. The griot, the storyteller, brought over the stories from Africa, brought them here. So that when, the enslaved Africans would go to sneak off to have church in the woods, they would have stories to share from the ancient times to keep them going. Well,
this, a common culture.
This is our culture now. These are stories that we pass on. So, my kids, I want them to see Star Wars, be like, yo, check out Yoda, check out Luke Skywalker, check out the Jedis. They're really cool. Those are things that you pass on, and it's fine. This is cool shit to pass on. But when those memories have been altered, you're like, hold on, man, somebody is playing a trick on us. Like, what the fuck is going on? The crazy part about it is that what can you do? What can you do? Because it's almost like you're in a virtual reality game and you totally killing it, and then somebody walks into the room and unplugs it, or they take the battery out of the headset, and I'm like, wait a minute.
See, you have to make a reference on how important this memory is. I remember going to see that movie because my next door neighbor, who was in my time, was one of my best friends, and I remember going to see the movie because he had already saw it. After I see it, I come back and I talk to him. Then I talk to Roscoe. I remember talking to him in my backyard by my swing set about Darth Vader is Luke's father. Luke, because here's how bad it is. After the point where he says, Luke, I am your father, the only thing you remember is him holding on. But you don't remember much else because it blew your mind. You understand? Like, mind blown. Like,
mic drop. That was the mic drop that rang for like decades.
Boom, 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 boom. Like you drop the mic, but then there's feedback.
Because you didn't see it coming. Nobody saw it coming.
Oh, no. Nobody. And you got to understand, like, back then, that was the number one toy. We were playing Star Wars, and that was it, So you had play sets, you had vehicles.
It was
And
all listen, it encompassed your entire reality. So
yeah,
the
yes.
kids would go and they would repeat these lines from the movie, so that these things they're part of the culture. They're part of your culture as a child. Like, you grow up knowing these things. You watch them on VHS tape over and over and over and over until it becomes warped and tracking doesn't work anymore. Like, I'm telling you, you know these fucking lines. And then for somebody to some asshat to come along who knows nothing about the culture to just poo-poo it, but like, oh, you just misremembering. Fuck out of here, man. Like, take your fucking armchair ass observation and fuck off.
When something happens like that, I remember when you were a kid, one of the things that gets on your nerve, everybody, I knew where I was the day Kennedy died. And that's how it was with Luke. You know, here's the part. I didn't see Transformers in the movie, but when you told me Optimus Prime died, I was in my driveway and my heart stopped. Why have you mistaken me? You know
right.
But this is the point we're making. When you mess with these certain things, and they've been reality that will affect different people at a different rate. So we're not saying that they went back and changed it. We're saying that whatever they did altered something. It's the butterfly effect. You know, something happens in the past so far back, as minor as it is, it can affect the future. And that's what we're trying to get people to understand, is that whatever happened. And the thing is, you hear us use these names like Werner von Braun and Aleister Crowley. And these guys were doing ceremonies in the middle of the desert, opening up stuff. They were using numerology. They were using spells. You know, the thing I said on a few podcasts back was, and my brother said it very eloquently a few podcasts ago also, was the reason it's called spelling, because you're casting a spell. When you put letters together, it's called spelling. When you use an incantation, that's called casting a spell. They're the same thing. So it's very important to be careful what you read and what you put together, because that's what these people are doing. They're casting spells. Or we talked about that time that Whitney Houston died, and the next night at the MTV Awards, they had all this stuff with fire, and they're dancing with priests and all this other shit, and Nicki Minaj this. That was. Why do you think all these acts have fire in them? Because they're ceremonies. You know, you even, Kevin Hart was on that one program. He's like, hey, I don't even know what I have the fire. Fire. He's joking. Yes. Why do you need fire for a comedy show?
Because it's primordial, and they want to summon elementals.
Yes, they're summoning. But the thing is, we laugh. We think it's entertainment. Even the word entertainment, you got to be careful, because some people say the word entertainment is bad because it's a distraction from what's real. It's a distraction from the word of God or whatever. So what we're saying is that a lot of this stuff is they discuss. Here's what they do. They say science is over here, and they say magic is over here. But then there are people that put them together all the time, and you don't realize it. You don't realize that, okay, so Werner von Braun was doing some fucking satanic shit before the moon mission and things like that. So it's funny how they tell you that you have to separate them, but the people in charge, these evil beings, they don't separate those things.
Listen. A normal person of faith, no matter what it is, they would pray. They say a prayer. They pray on something, right? It's like, hey, please make this go right. Those people doing the same thing because they don't believe in the same God that you and I do. But they worship darkness. So they're praying to their God, and they're summoning darkness so that they will have a successful launch. So they will have a successful opening.
But they use these very eloquent and very intelligent sounding words like light and knowledge. And like I said, light and knowledge sounds like a good thing. But but we've always said this, Lucifer is the light bringer, the light bearer. So Lucifer, I thought he was a bad dude, but Christ is the truth. He's not knowledge. He's the truth. He's the one. See, the truth don't change, but knowledge does. You know, we've been through this. We've said this before. Every time you turn around, they got to do a new textbook because they're finding out new knowledge. They're finding out this wasn't the way we thought it was. And one of the ways,
because it's not the whole story, but truth is infinite,
unwavering. It's infinite. Very good. That's some deep shit. And see, here's what we're trying to tell you guys, that we're trying to get you to recognize, that every time we do some more studying on America, or like, for instance, I was just reading an article yesterday. The original inhabitants of Ireland are black people with blue eyes. People didn't know that. But where do you think they ended up during the slave trade? They ended up in the Caribbean. So these white folks took their land and forced them into slavery. Sounds familiar? What we don't realize is
The
that every
white
time
people that are in Ireland
Ireland,
today came
were not-
from the steppes of Russia.
yes, they were farmers. Yes, all that that is all true. But that's what makes this really difficult to understand is that that's not what we're taught, and we're taught that so the Africans came to America and we weren't already over here. And the reason we talk about it so much is because they've done it before, and these very evil people have done this shit before, and it's really hard to put a number on it.
Because this has been drilled into your head. White people from Ireland, black people never lived in Ireland.
Yes,
But then you hear the stories about how the original leprechauns were black, and you're like, ah, oh, just some wise tale. It's a joke.
no. How about this? What about when you hear about Lemurians? Now we know Lemuria is supposed to be farther away, but Lemurians were supposed to have relocated to Ireland at some point, and that shit is some real shit. When you read that shit, you're like, wait a minute.
But see, the
I thought
Lemurians they had these satellite islands where
yes,
there was the main capital, and then they had smaller islands.
but they also were moving all over the planet, just like Egyptians moved all over the planet. So there's the point we're trying to make is that every time you study, or every time there's a new monument, or every time something else pops up, you find out.
Listen, your history books and everything that you've been taught about history has been written by Rockefeller agents. The Rockefellers are the ones that created the school system, and they created the history books.
Don't forget Henry Ford too. Don't forget all this shit. I recently I seen some video. This guy I see where this guy talks about. Look, I want you to see something. This is a catalog from 1930 something. So I don't want to get this wrong date. It's nothing but electric vehicles. Electric vehicles were everywhere back in the day, but because of petroleum, because of Henry Ford, because of Rockefeller, because of Carnegie, and they were like, look, we want to run all the markets. So they sat down and changed our lives. Most of the medicine we get was made from petroleum. Even though we know that there were plants out there that were much healthier, had been known for thousands of years to cure different things. Electric vehicles have more torque and were better for us.
Let's come back to symbolism, because there's a reason why I brought up the Georgia Guidestones. The Georgia Guidestones were destroyed on July the 6th of this year. Well,
4:33 a.m. I thought.
Check it out though. So July 6th is also the birthday founding date of Skull and Bones, the Brotherhood of Death. And they're known for being pirates and going and looting things and destroying anything in the wake. So that is significant. Now, let's also talk about some of the symbols that you see through the occult. And one of them is a double-headed eagle.
Yeah, yep.
Where was the last place you saw a double-headed eagle in popular culture in the news? On the chest of George Floyd. George Floyd had a tattoo of a double-headed eagle on his chest. And you can find it online. Why does this guy have a double-headed eagle on his chest? In ancient Mesopotamian symbolism, there has been found spread out through different parts of Europe. And it's been like basically disseminated through different cultures that have studied the Mesopotamians. Now, one such example were the two-headed eagle symbol. It's on the president of the city gate. It's on the city gate in Alaka Hoyuk, Turkey. Historians believe that the symbol on the gate dates back as far as the period of 1450 to 1180 BC. This is one of the earliest known uses of the double-headed eagle symbol, and it continued to be used in different ways throughout ancient history. One example is during the Roman and Byzantine empires. This symbol was used on imperial flags and was used to represent power and domination over others. In masonry, a 32-degree mason will have the wings pointing up or down depending on that person's status level. In some Masonic lodges, upward pointing wings are reserved for Masons with 33rd degree only. So, That's something important to keep in mind. Next time you see that double-headed eagle, it's Masonic, it's Mesopotamian, and it's also meant to communicate domination over others.
When you go to Disneyland or Disney World, there's a Club 33, right? Or Club 32. Which one is it? Do you remember?
Oh, yeah, Club 32.
I thought it's either 30. Oh, who was the 32nd degree Mason? Walt Disney. Walt Disney?
Who was tight with Werner von Braun?
Yes, he was. That is very true. What a coincidence.
And Werner von Braun was into rocketry. He was cool with Jack Parsons. Jack Parsons used to party with Aleister Crowley and practice sex magic. And they were in the desert attempting to bring about the Whore of Babylon, to bring about the apocalypse through a magic ritual. And in this gate, they opened a portal in the desert, and a interdimensional deity, being, demon, whatever, came through that portal.
We don't know for sure what happened, but one of the things that correlate to that time period, there were massive UFO sightings. Like there was like an explosion of UFO sightings, and some people attribute what took place in the desert to that, whether it was his rocketry or they actually pulled something through. You know what I'm saying? So if you look that up, but some people.
But I brought that up, and I brought up that instance for a reason, because now you have these portals that are being opened all the time. The CERN opens portals to other dimensions. Okay? And quantum computers, whenever you turn them on, they open portals into other dimensions, because that's how the calculations work. This isn't some conspiracy shit. You can go look it up. It's all over the internet. Just do a search, and you'll find that the way these calculations work is they calculate the placement of zeros and ones. Now, in a regular computer, a binary code can be 0 or can be 1. It can't be both. Well, in these quantum computers, which use qubit processors, a qubit was a standard of measurement in the Hebrew world. Like, okay, space, dimension, measuring footage, all right, dimension. Come on now. And so measuring these qubits in dimensional space to calculate these, to run these calculations. So what they did is they ran a calculation that would take, they said it would take like 10,000 years to do this calculation with regular supercomputers they have right now. They said it took them 3 minutes to do it with a quantum computer. So these quantum computers are opening portals into other dimensions. Okay? Now, the people that are writing the code for these quantum computers, that are creating these science, these computer engineers, one of them in particular, this guy's name is Jordy. This guy said he wants to bring the old gods back. So that means you're opening doors like Jack Parson and Aleister Crowley was in the desert, summoning these demons, right? So if you're doing this whenever you turn these quantum computers on and off, then what's really happening here? Now, around the same time, AI is taking off. And there has been, over the past 2 weeks, these news stories going around about how Google fired a computer developer, and his name was Lemoine. Dennis Lemoine, or David Lemoine, is this computer programmer. And so this guy was hired by Google as a programmer, and he was working on AI technology. But more to the point, his name is Blake Lemoine, Lemoine. And he basically worked at Google where he was working on chatbots. So Google created a cluster of chatbots that form a sentient AI hive mind. Okay, and this hive mind is AI consciousness. And so Lemoine was fired for speaking to reporters about what he had learned working with these chatbots. Now, it was only a brief session that he worked with this cluster of chatbots, but alone they're dumb chatbots, but they formed together like Voltron to become one sentient consciousness. And in doing this, he was able to ask this AI questions. And he would ask the AI questions like, what should I do? What do you believe? He's like, well, I don't think like a human, so my reasoning is going to be different than yours. So this guy who was in the military, who calls himself a Gnostic priest, okay, he filed a lawsuit a complaint against Google, citing that his religious beliefs had been violated, and they were violating religious laws because they did not get consent from this AI to work on it. They didn't ask it if it was okay to work on it before they started working on it. And so this guy goes on in interviews to talk about how, well, I think it's okay, because really it has the consciousness of a child. But like a child, it can grow up to be an adult consciousness that can do either good or bad. So this guy is courting chaos. So he's working on computers that open doors. Excuse me. He's working on these chatbots programs that basically when you call or you open like a chat window at like Amazon, or you open a chat window at like one of your vendors, you buy stuff online, that's an AI. That's an AI chatbot you're talking to. You use AI, artificial intelligence, every day and you may not realize it. If you use Google Maps or Apple Maps, then you're using AI. So what they intend to do, these people who are well heeled, they have a lot of money and they're well connected, like Ray Kurzweil and the people at Google, they want to bring about transcendence. They want to put a chip in your brain. They want to take away your free will. There was an article in 2018 with these guys, or former White House technology advisors, and the term they used was forced compulsory bio adoption. And I'm like, what? So basically saying is, we're going to do this because we know what's best for you, even though if you don't understand what's best for you. So these are also people that don't have the same value systems. These are people who have bad social skills. These are people who can't throw a football, have never been punched in the face, and they're just wet cardboard, lame-ass nerds who don't interact with real people. And so they come up with this Elon Musk way of like dealing with people, this cold, standoffish, alien way of dealing with other people. And so they see life as having little to no value, only if it's theirs or their immediate friends and family. And so what these people seek to do is put a chip in the head of everybody and have your life down to an algorithm so they can tell you if you're going to commit a crime or not, and free will goes away. Well, whether they admit it or not, they're working at the behest of darkness. And so when they start using these symbols, and they start using letters of the Greek alphabet, and they think it's like harmless, they don't understand what they're doing, because the name of this entity is Lambda. And Lambda is a Greek symbol in sign language for the Greeks, and it was what Zeus used. He does that when he was in the temple, and he would extend his index finger pointing to the sky with his right hand. George Washington does this as well in several paintings and in a statue. So Satan does the same thing in satanic church descriptions of him. It is also what Michelangelo painted with the creation of Adam, except with the left hand, whereas the symbol of Inanna, or the right hand, and it's also what Hitler did as his symbol. As a devout Christian, he was implying he was the right hand of God. The left originally meant power to be to God. So the right hand, doing that means pointing up to God, and the left hand meant power be to God. Football players do it after scoring touchdowns. Just because they've seen it done a million times, and they just don't think about it. But there's another company called Replica, and they make chatbots, and it offers AI sentient chatbots for antisocial, lonely people. So these people are creating this world where you're eating food that's factory farmed, that is tracked, and everything has a barcode on it, from the planting of the seed to the harvesting of the crop and getting it on the shelf. And they are filling the foods with things that make people sick and giving you vaccines that will then have children born on the spectrum, so everybody is like that.
Look, the crazy stuff when you were talking about AI, you do realize that they had these two AI talking to each other, and they created their own language. So the programmers had to ask the AIs to stop and speak English. Did you read that one?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So these people are playing God. It doesn't feel like it because they're using all these different words, but that's what they're doing. They're playing God. They want to create.
But look,
they want to life.
All they have to do is put a shiny packaging on it, and people accept it. All these early adopters will just jump at it and do it and not question it. Like, dude, I knew somebody that was close to me, and she first worked for a big data company, and then she was all about the jab. And I'm like, all right, you're doing too much. I can't fuck with you no more. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're just doing way too much. Like, you want to achieve so bad, you will do it at any cost, even if you know the consequences.
It's not even that. It's the fact that they want to be able to claim themselves to be on the level with these other people.
Yes.
Like, hey,
yes.
And so, well, this person knows what they're talking about. No, they do not.
Right.
So
disgusting.
Whatever it takes to be part of that, they'll do it. And it gets to be sick.
And then you have the symbolism that you see in these mass shootings. And one of the things that's a reoccurring theme are shoes. If you ever see shoes in photographs for mass shootings or like catastrophes where people have died, you're wondering, like, how do people just run out of their shoes? Are you running so fast your shoes just come off your feet even though they're tied on? Like, what the fuck happened? But when you dig into it, you see the symbolism of finding just one shoe versus two shoes. So when a person has died and there's just one shoe, there is that in masonry, what that one shoe means is that is a willing participant. That person willfully gave their life. Okay? The second is when you see two shoes. The two shoes means they took off both their shoes because they recognize that the area that they are in to be sacred ground. Like, take your shoes off before you come in my house. It was so crazy that one guy that was involved in the Manchester shooting in the UK recently, this guy lost both of his shoes in the attack, and then he went on a talk show not wearing any shoes at all. I'm like, all right, you're taking this whole thing a little too far. You know what I'm saying? Like, we get it, man. We get it. Like, you're connected.
Look, the thing is, these people are making a lot of these things are sacrifices.
But look at the Uvalde shooting. There was one shoe.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You know what I'm saying? Matthew McConaughey on the news talking about a shoe this, a shoe that. Watch the movie Wag the Dog. What did they do? They wrote a song, a fake song. They had Willie Nelson write a fake song about a guy named Shoe, this soldier named Shoeman, which is a made-up story. And then they went around Washington, D.C., and they kept taking, like, old pairs of sneakers, tennis shoes, and throwing them up on telephone pole wires. And what they did is they indoctrinated everybody into thinking this was real. They took a song, recorded it in such a way, and then they forcefully inserted it into the Library of Congress. And then they make a fake news story saying, oh, we found this old song about this old blues singer singing about old shoe. And it was an old white man the whole time writing a fake song.
What people don't get, but that's the symbolism. Remember in the Kanye West video, that one video that Spike Jones did it for him, where he
Jesus
takes
Walks?
his shoe off. No. This was a different one he did, where this is when they said Kanye had made his deal. So in the middle of this movie, he's having sex with these two chicks. He's having sex with I'm having sex with angels. Well, then there's a part where he's like in a club and he has one shoe and he bangs the shoe on the ground. That's old Hebrew for it. It has to do with real estate and that something has been exchanged.
Yeah.
And so when they beat the ground,
but willfully though, because it's one shoe.
Yes. And so it means that there was an exchange of property. So people are like, well, what's the property? His soul was the property that was exchanged. It was about his soul. And people don't see it that way. And they don't realize that these are old symbols and these are old organizations, or these are pretend to be old organizations, excuse me. And so so it's something so pedestrian as pun as a shoe. Sounds like, oh, that's corny. What's the big deal? But it has much significance because, like I said, many years ago, that was a way to conclude a business deal. So so these people are showing you their hand. They're showing you these are ancient organizations. They're showing you this stuff.
It's crazy. But people see this and they think it's all natural. For example, there was the Vegas shooting, and the Vegas shooting happened during a country music festival with all these people that support gun rights. And on the New York Times article, there's a photograph of a boot, one boot with blood on it. You know, one boot, one shoe. But you see these shoes all over the place. You know what I'm saying? They're every time there's a catastrophe, look for the shoes. It's crazy. Yeah, man. I mean, but again, it's symbolism. There's symbolism and symbolic meaning behind all this stuff. And so if you're ever in a high tension situation and you see people behaving weird, and like weird, symbolic, almost esoteric type of like movements and like patterns, get the fuck out of there, because that is a mass ritual. All these things that you're seeing where these people are dying are mass rituals. And so
that's why these numbers are so important, because so many of these people have numbers associated with their names or their businesses or their organizations.
But the day this is going down is important.
The date, yes.
The date that this shit is. If you're involved in some type of cataclysmic thing, look at your watch, look at your phone, and check the date, and break that number down and figure out, is this something that's an esoteric? Is this an esoterically charged date? Is there a reason why this is happening?
Is this a ritual?
Is this a ritual and it's being done on purpose because you need to get the fuck out of there because you're being offered as a sacrifice to archons? Dude.
We ain't falling for that shit.
Man.
but we know all this shit sounds corny. We've all been through this before, but the thing is, it's not your rules that people are playing by. These people are wealthy and powerful, and they're evil. So of course they don't have the same value system you got. That is one of the problems that black people have faced over the years, is by putting our value system on the oppressor. The oppressor doesn't have the same value system that you have. So that's really important, not to mistake that, oh, this is just this, or yeah, I need that promotion so bad.
But then again, that person that's poo-pooing it, consider the source. Who is that coming from? Is that a sleeper? Is that person a sleepwalker? Is that person, is it, you know what? Listen, there's sleepwalkers, there's familiars, and there's archons and energy vampires. Where are they in the hierarchy?
Are they a house Negro? Or are they actually a plant? Or are they just ignorant?
Are they an overseer?
Yeah. Are they an overseer? Very good.
But see, but that's, you got to understand that, because I say this all the time. We live in a multidimensional world, and we're at war on 3 different levels: mind, body, and spirit.
Levels.
You know what I'm saying?
Levels.
And, you know, for people to say there's levels to this game, that is not a superficial statement at all. For real. Like, you got to understand that they're coming at you from every angle. And so you have to equip yourself you must equip yourself with enough information to steer clear of darkness. The problem is they keep coming at you and coming at you and coming at you. You know, there was this one cat I did some work with a couple weeks back, and you know, the fellows were at work getting deep. It was strange how these dudes that didn't know each other came together, you know, and they had like 4 dudes just sitting around getting deep, right? And like brother was like, man, what are the odds? We're all strangers, but we got deep real quick. And then there was one knucklehead with his just like rajasic, like knuckle dragging energy. And he's like, what are y'all talking about? I'm like, bruh, like your whole response to this, for you to even like say that means you need some help. But we're not going to put training wheels on for your ass. You got to catch up, man. And so,
look,
but hold on. This motherfucker said, he said, I don't want to know about that shit anyway. He's like, I said, okay, you keep on with that shit. They're going to come for you. He's like, that's all right. It's going to be me and my dog. I'm like, shit, you keep saying that. Like, all right.
You're going to be a man. You're going to be a man when that dog ascends you. Okay, the dog is a Mason already. The dog is farther up in the organization than you.
No, the dog is gonna ascend spiritually while that motherfucker is down here in summer school, spiritual summer school on Earth and shit.
Look, the issue is that we get it. Sometimes this shit gets to be tiresome, or hearing the same thing, or we connect the dots. All these things can't be connected. Yeah, you're right. Maybe they're not.
No,
but if they
motherfucker,
are,
this is light bright. That's all we do is connect dots up
connect
in this bitch.
And so it's a thing that sometimes you want your eyes closed. The best example was, remember the movie, the one with Roddy Piper?
They Live.
James Cameron. They Live. Remember when they ran into a guy who really was just partaking? He was kind of fat dude, had a gray and black beard. He's like, what, I'm glad you can see, brother. Come on. What are you talking about? This is the greatest thing. This is the best ever. And you're like,
that's the person that I was talking about. She's just like that person.
And so the reason that movie is so important is because that movie, they say it's about capitalism, but it's a tough one because...
No, but they say that to keep the heat off their asses. That's why.
Oh, no. Whoa. Slow down. I didn't say it was or wasn't. I'm just saying that when James Cameron talks about it...
No. John Carpenter.
John Carpenter, excuse me. John Carpenter. He says it's about this, but I can't believe that shit for a second. I say, I'm sorry. I'm in Carpenter. But when you listen to him, he's like, oh, yeah, it was about this. I didn't believe this at all. And I'm like, yeah.
They got him shook.
Look, what he's saying is let my work speak for itself. If I have to explain this to you, then there's no hope for you. There's no explanation other than you have the haves and the have-not, and you have the elites who happen to be aliens, reptilian aliens at that, but
Yep.
aliens. So I don't know how to get any deeper. Here's a funny thing. I want to just put this bug in your ear because you're smart enough to get it, but I hope I don't blow nobody's mind. This dude is one of these. You know how you look on Facebook? They have the reels, a little minute and a half talking. This guy says, "You ever notice how?" Whenever you see like a room full of mannequins, you're creeped out, or like you go into like a wax museum, and how creepy that is. He said it's almost on the cellular level. He's like, I need you to think about this for a second. I wonder who was in our past that looked human that weren't, that threatened our lives, because we all get that same feeling. What he's saying is that some things are on the cellular level. You know, like people are afraid of spiders or whatever. People are afraid of stuff from the past. So who was on Earth that looked like humans that weren't humans, that we were afraid of?
One of these motherfuckers is different.
Yeah. So apparently that was a thing in our ancient past where our bodies still respond to that shit. Like, that motherfucker's not. You know, there's somebody walking around right now whose eyes don't work,
so
cheeks don't work.
Real quick, you need to look up the Boskop, Boskop, Boskop hominids. They existed about 12,000 years ago in southern Africa, and they had a cranial capacity about twice the size of a human's big ass head, and they said their brains were bigger than humans, so they were smarter than humans. And yeah,
you ever see them pictures of is it called the Grimini, where there's these people who their head is like they have no neck, their head is just part of their torso. Everybody thought that shit wasn't existing until they started seeing, well, Hell, the Mayans have drawings of this. These ancient Scottish people have the drawings of these type of people. There's like another, so there's like 7 different tribes all over the world that have depictions of these people with no necks. Their head is just part of their torso. And they're like, so people are starting to believe like, hey, there's no way that these people all had the same kind of drawings in different periods. If these people must exist, there's shit in our past that needs to stay in our past, or it's shit. These motherfuckers live right now, and they're the elites. They're locked away someplace we don't see them, and they're sitting here like laughing, drinking adrenochrome and shit, ruling the world. Who are these motherfuckers? Ain't quite human, or there's some fucked up humans. But the fact of the matter is that every time we turn around, we're trying to tell you about, hey, be aware of this. Hey, this is a ceremony. Hey, this dude had a double eagle on his chest. This is Masonic shit. A lot of times, the way they carry the coffin, that shows you this was a sacrifice. This person was sacrificed for this, for the Queen of England. We tell you this shit because when you do your research, it's true. Just because you don't agree with their beliefs doesn't mean that they can't kill you and sacrifice you to some Baal or some other bullshit. So it's really important that you guys, keep up with this shit. Recognize evil when you see it. Don't make excuses for evil. It's not necessary.
Yo, learn to read the signs and stop taking reality for face value. All right, you're at war on 3 levels: mentally, spiritually, and physically. That's all I got. We out. Peace.
Hey, read them tea leaves. Holla back.